Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going deep on a case out of India's Supreme Court.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, and it really kind of flips the idea of justice delayed is justice denied right on its head.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So we're looking at Bhuwan Mohan Singh v. Meena.
Bhuwan Mohan Singh v. Meena.
Yeah, from way back in 2014.
2014.
And you might be thinking, an Indian court case? What's that got to do with me? But stick with us.
Right.
The themes here, I think they're going to really resonate no matter where you are.
Okay. Yeah. No, I definitely see that.
Well, yeah.
Especially with a topic like justice delayed is justice denied.
Exactly.
That's something I think that we can all relate to.
Yeah. So to kick things off, maybe you can set the scene for us.
Sure.
What exactly happened in this case?
Well, just imagine a wife and her son. They've had to leave their home.
Okay.
And they're seeking financial support from the husband, which is legally called maintenance.
Right.
And this is exactly what family court is for.
Yeah, to provide that kind of support.
Yeah, when people need it most.
So, I mean, seems like kind of an open and shut case, right?
You'd think so, right?
They get the support and everyone moves on.
Well, not exactly. This case actually dragged on in family court for 9 years.
9 years?
Before they even reached a decision.
Whoa, I can't even...
It was a long time.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know where to begin to process that kind of... Wait.
And it gets worse.
Oh, no.
So after 9 years, the court decided to grant the wife maintenance.
Okay.
But only from the date of the order.
Wait, so that means she got nothing for those 9 years?
Exactly.
Hold on, that doesn't seem right.
Right.
It's like they were being punished for the court taking so long. Yeah. What was the reasoning there?
Well, it's actually a common practice in some courts, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah, and that's precisely what landed this case before the Supreme Court.
I see.
They saw this as a symptom of a much bigger problem.
Okay.
So family courts were granting these things called adjournments.
Adjournments?
Basically postponements.
Okay.
Way too easily.
So they were just kind of like hitting the snooze button on a case over and over and over again.
For years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's like the court system itself was actually contributing to the injustice.
Exactly.
By just letting these cases drag on.
Yeah. And the Supreme Court decided to tackle two issues head on.
Okay.
First, this habit of granting adjournments too freely.
Right.
Leading to these massive delays.
Right.
And second, the practice of only granting maintenance from the date of the order.
Which, as we said, basically just adds another layer of hardship to people that are already struggling.
Exactly.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. Like, you go to court seeking support, and then the delay itself just makes your situation even more difficult.
And the Supreme Court justices, they really seem to understand that.
I hope so.
Yeah, you can really see it in their decision.
Okay.
The way they emphasize the human side of this whole case.
Right.
And, you know, they quote Section 125 of the Criminal Procedure Code, which lays out the rules for maintenance. Yeah.
And the whole point of this law is to prevent people from, like, falling into poverty, becoming homeless.
To provide support.
It's supposed to offer quick help to those who need it.
And quick being the operative word there.
Right.
Which clearly was not the reality for this family.
Not at all.
So how did the Supreme Court handle this specific case?
Okay.
Did they just point out the problems, or did they actually make some changes?
Yeah, good question. They did both, actually.
Okay.
So first, they overturned the lower court's decision.
Okay.
And they ordered the husband to pay maintenance, but from the date that the wife originally filed the application.
Wow.
Yeah.
So justice is delayed wasn't entirely justice denied in this case.
Right. They at least tried to make things right in the end.
That's good to hear that they actually gained some relief after all those years.
Right.
But what about the bigger problem? Of all the delays, did the Supreme Court just leave it at that?
Not at all.
Okay.
This is where the judgment gets really interesting.
Okay. They used this specific case to send a much broader message to all family courts.
Interesting.
They basically said, hey, you need to be more sensitive to what's happening to these families.
Right.
You can't just keep hitting the snooze button on their lives.
Right. So they were calling out the family court for not recognizing the human impact of these delays.
Precisely. And the judgment is pretty blunt about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They even use the phrase extremely liberal when talking about the family court's use of adjournments.
Interesting.
You know, they say that ignoring the purpose of the law, it doesn't just go against what lawmakers intended, but it crushes the hopes of the people who need help.
Okay, so reading between the lines here.
Yeah.
They're telling these judges that they need to step up their game.
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
Yeah. And the Supreme Court doesn't stop there.
Oh, really?
They go on to emphasize the need for what they call judicial responsiveness.
Judicial responsiveness.
Yeah. Essentially, they're saying, judges, remember that you're dealing with real people and families here.
Right.
These aren't just files on your desk.
It makes you wonder how often people just get lost in the legal system itself.
Right.
You know, we've all heard the saying, justice is blind. Mm-hmm. But it seems like sometimes it can be a little deaf to the human side of things, too.
Absolutely. And that's a point worth pondering.
Yeah.
I mean, legal systems, by their nature, have to follow procedures and rules.
Right.
But we have to remember that those procedures, they're ultimately there to serve people.
Of course.
And when the system gets bogged down, it's the people who pay the price.
Right. So back to this case. Mm-hmm. This wasn't just a win for the wife and son, was it?
Definitely not.
Okay.
This judgment sets what's called a precedent.
A precedent.
Yeah. It means other courts are going to look at this case when making decisions in similar situations.
Right.
So the Supreme Court was sending a clear message to family courts. Speed things up, especially when it comes to things like divorce.
Right.
Child custody or maintenance.
It makes sense. They saw this case as a chance to change the system for the better.
Right.
But how realistic is that?
Well,
I mean, courts have a lot of cases to handle.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Courts are overloaded everywhere you go.
Right.
But this case highlights, I think, a really fundamental tension in any justice system.
Okay.
How do you balance the need to be thorough and fair with the need to resolve things quickly, especially when people's basic needs are at stake?
Yeah. That's a tough question.
Right.
And there's probably no one-size-fits-all answer.
Probably not.
But it seems like this case is pushing for at least a shift in priorities.
Right. The Supreme Court is saying, look, sometimes justice delayed is literally causing harm.
Right.
We need to find ways to make the system more responsive to people's needs.
And remember, this isn't just about India.
Right.
The problems they're grappling with exist all over the world.
All over.
Courts are struggling to keep up with the number of cases.
Right.
And people end up waiting years for a resolution.
Exactly. So while we're talking about this specific case in India, the themes here are universal.
Right.
It raises all these questions about the human costs of legal delays.
Right.
And how do we ensure that the pursuit of justice doesn't become a source of suffering in itself?
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the legal arguments and technicalities.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's about people's lives.
And this case reminds us that the system isn't perfect.
Right.
There are always ways to improve it, to make it more efficient, more compassionate, and ultimately more just.
So we've unpacked the case. We looked at the Supreme Court's reasoning.
Right.
We even touched on some of the broader implications for justice systems globally. But this deep dive isn't just about understanding what happened.
Right.
It's about making you the listener. Think about what it means for you. We've talked about these systemic changes and global implications.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back down to earth for a minute. You know, think about your own life, your own experiences. Have you ever felt frustrated by bureaucracy or delays?
Oh, absolutely.
Even in seemingly simple things.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've all been there.
Right.
Waiting on hold.
Yeah.
Navigating confusing paperwork. Feeling like you're just a number in the system.
Totally.
It's easy to lose sight of the human element, I think, when you're caught up in those kinds of situations.
Exactly. And this case, I think, really forces us to confront that.
Yeah.
In a really powerful way, because those delays, those frustrations, they're not just abstract concepts.
Right.
They have real consequences.
Real consequences for real people.
Real people, yeah.
Makes you wonder, how much of that is just unavoidable?
Right.
Is a certain amount of red tape just the price we pay?
Right.
For a functioning society?
Yeah. Are there ways to...
Right. Are there ways to streamline things?
Right. To make the systems more efficient.
Right. Exactly.
Without sacrificing fairness.
Without sacrificing fairness. Exactly.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't have all the answers.
Me neither.
But I think cases like this one can spark those conversations.
Oh, sure.
They can push us to think about how we can make things better, not just in grand abstract terms, but in practical everyday ways.
Absolutely. And it's not just about big systemic overhauls either.
Right.
Sometimes it's about individual actions.
Yeah.
Small changes that can make a difference.
Like what?
Being aware of the potential for delays.
Okay.
advocating for yourself and for others, demanding accountability from institutions. I mean, these are all things we can do to push for a more just and efficient system.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a challenge.
A challenge, okay.
Think about the quote from the judgment we mentioned earlier. The delay in adjudication by the family court is not only against human rights, but also against the basic embodiment of dignity of an individual.
Wow. Powerful stuff.
How can you in your own life help uphold that dignity?
Yeah.
How can you contribute, even in a small way, to a world where justice isn't just a concept, but a reality experienced by everyone?
It's a powerful thought and a worthy goal to strive for.
For sure.
And remember, justice isn't something that just happens in courtrooms.
Right.
It's a value we embody in all of our interactions.
Yeah.
In the way we treat each other. And the systems we create and the choices that we make every single day.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the heart of justice delayed.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We hope it's given you some food for thought and maybe even inspired you to take action.
Some action.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.